And now, live from downtown Amarillo, Texas, this is the Amarillo Pioneer Podcast. Here's your host and the editor of the Amarillo Pioneer, Thomas Warren.
Thank you, everyone, for listening to the Amarillo Pioneer Podcast again this evening, and we are excited to be speaking with another candidate running in the May 6th election. This candidate is running for Amarillo City Council place number 1 to replace Cole Stanley, who is leaving his seat to run for mayor. So a lot of changes, and in this race we are guaranteed to see a new face, and we're excited to be talking to Josh Kraft, who is hoping to be that new face on the city council. And we're going to be talking to Josh and finding out why he's running and all of that good stuff. But before we do that, Josh, thanks so much for being with us. Really appreciate it. And how are you doing this evening?
I'm doing great, Thomas. I really appreciate you having me on, and just excited for the citizens of Amarillo to get another chance to hear who I'm about, and look forward to talking with you tonight.
No, absolutely. So for the people out there who are listening, they might not know much about you yet. Just tell us a little about yourself and what got you into this race for city council to begin with.
Okay. Yeah, so I'm 28 years old. I'm a lieutenant for Randall County Fire Department. I'm a husband, a father to 2 kids, a small business owner. And basically kind of the reason why I want to get involved is it's just been disheartening to see all the disagreements and division with people in our city. And I really just want to bring a fresh voice for the citizens and kind of help shift that culture, bring people together and try to restore that trust that's been broken within the elected leadership.
So I have to address the elephant in the room when it comes to your candidacy, and that's the fact that you are, I guess you are the youngest candidate running this year, actually, for any of the seats. What could Amarillo residents expect as a benefit from electing someone who is so young to the city council? I say so young. You are older than me. But, for compared to a lot of the candidates, what could people expect electing someone with a younger perspective?
Man, it's exactly like you said. It's going to be kind of a fresh perspective, and I think also just a different way of thinking on things. So, theoretically and historically, the voting population in the city has been over the age of 65, and I'd like to just turn out a younger voter base. And on top of that too is I'm kind of in a unique position with just my career, how long I've been in public service, and I think I can bring some good leadership experience to that and try to restore that trust within elected leadership.
If you don't mind me asking, you might have said it, I might have missed it, but how long have you worked as a firefighter?
So I started as I volunteered for 1 year in 2015, and I went full time in 2016. So basically, this year total is 8 years.
Oh wow! So you have a long time in already.
Yeah, it's pretty crazy. Time flies by, and I guess whenever you're having fun, time truly does fly by.
Yeah, I mentioned no one heard this because we were off the air when I spoke to you about it, but I was actually mentioning that you and I have some mutual friends who you've worked with. So, you're good in my book. I think that's really exciting to have someone young running. Well, let's talk about your priorities. You, like I said, you're a first-time candidate. You're running for office for city council for this open seat, and it is, this year we have a near record field running generally throughout the city. But I think for place 1, this is the largest field that's ever run for place 1. So tell us about some of the priorities you want to tackle and what sets you apart in this big group of candidates.
So I think first and foremost is prioritizing our core services again. It really put the spotlight on it back specifically on the trash service, and like I said, stuff like that just doesn't happen overnight. And seeing that the transparency that wasn't there, I think putting a press release out is transparency. And I definitely want to bring that back and prevent it from going to the back burner. That's kind of what the city exists to do, is to provide core services to citizens. And we had to find that balance of taking care of those while planning for future growth. And one thing that's really big with me is shifting that culture to a customer service space instead of an us versus them. That's where my mind has been geared, especially when I got in the fire service. Is just, what can I really do for you? That's what I want to do, and I think everyone deserves that, because at the end of the day, that's what the elected officials are there for. They're there for the citizens. They were elected by the people, and so that's probably one of the big ones up there, with prioritizing core services and prioritizing public safety. I think every citizen, every neighborhood deserves to be protected and feel safe, and every first responder deserves to feel like they're an asset, not a commodity. And when we sit and look at people that are leaving places in Amarillo to go work in other cities and in other places, or going to the private sector, we have to align things up so that that doesn't happen anymore. Because when people get hired, I view them as an investment, right? So that's the type of culture I want to help change.
Sure. Well, let's talk about your experience a little bit more with public safety. Like we said a minute ago, you're a firefighter. You've been doing this for a long time. Obviously, you're not employed by the city of Amarillo, but still,
No.
you have experience with kind of one of the same essential key services the city offers, right? Um, so I spoke with an opponent of yours a few days ago on this podcast, and that episode hasn't come out yet. But that candidate said, well, essentially paraphrasing, how do we know that a firefighter is not going to give the firefighters more than they need, or something like that? And you take that argument wherever you want to go with it. But as far as you're concerned, with that background in public safety, how are you going to address the public safety needs in this community? And do you even want to address any argument from your opponents like that?
No, I think that argument could be, like, honestly, at anybody. I mean, like business owners or people that are in business as well, because I mean, everything is going to have an effect. So I mean, if you're going to try to give police, fire, workers raises, that's going to affect everything else in the city. So we have to be really objective to it. Uh, but the general consensus is that they have been put on the back burner for a while, and those they're the first line of people that we call when we dial 911, and they do need taken care of. And I just have I guess the caveat of being a fireman, but um, that's I think that just help employs that, my customer service mindset and my willingness to serve people, regardless of whether I'm a fireman or not.
Well, let's go ahead and address the elephant in the room when it comes to this election, and that is the Civic Center. We had the lawsuit from Alex Fairley last year, and you can judge on your own what we saw from come out in the courtroom, what we saw in Judge Souter's ruling. But overall, I think that it's probably fair to say that some stuff came out that was a little concerning to a lot of people in this community. And specifically about that attempt to do the Civic Center project. Of course, not about the Civic Center as a whole, but you speak to people in Amarillo, and I think most of the city agrees that there are issues at the Civic Center, but they don't really agree on how to go about dealing with those issues. So if you're elected, should the Civic Center project, and will the Civic Center project, in your mind, be a priority that needs to be addressed right now? And if so, how are you going to go about addressing that?
I'm not against expanding or remodeling the Civic Center. The biggest thing was that the citizens voted against it. And some of the council sought a workaround to go against the voters' decision, and that broke a lot of trust. We have to trust and honor the voting process. If I'm elected, I think that the council will need to establish a plan that's effective and supported by the voters. But in my opinion, I think we need to focus on the core services that are lacking first, and still balance plans for future growth in tourism, because that is a quality of life deal. And um, so that's like I said, we have to balance those plans for future growth. But I don't. It's done and over with right now, and it's not even on my mind.
So if you're elected, that's not something that's going to get resurrected, at least if you have a say about it.
No, not at all. No.
Okay. Well, let's talk about another issue that has come up with this election, especially recently. The Texas Republican Party, a couple of weeks ago, passed a resolution calling on city council candidates and mayoral candidates across Texas to take a firm stand against taxpayer-funded lobbying and to commit to withdrawing from taxpayer-funded lobbying services if they're elected. And I think this particular resolution goes not only to paying independent lobbyists, but paying, lobbying dues and fees to groups like the Texas Municipal League. Where do you stand on that issue? It's becoming a hotter topic now that the Republican Party of Texas, of course, has taken a stand. But as a candidate yourself, where do you stand on that issue? And can voters, well, I guess what can voters expect you to do?
Yeah. So that, like I said, that is a very big topic right now, and I'm still continuing to learn about it. My opinion on it is our elected representatives have to do their job to prevent that utilization of taxpayer money. I do recognize there are some projects that happen because of lobbying, but I don't think that the taxpayers need to pay for it. Should have happened full transparency with the voters and leave it up to the voters. But I think too is that I think if we're going to try to stay competitive with other cities, lobbying may be a deal, but maybe that's something that we're going to have to use within from revenues versus taxpayer dollars, if that makes sense. So like I said, that's kind of my initial thoughts on that. I'm still learning a lot about that stuff right now.
Sure. Absolutely. And I do appreciate you, being totally honest about the fact that, you are still learning about a lot of these issues. And I think, it's kind of interesting when you speak to a lot of candidates, because you talk to some people who can answer everything, but you could tell they don't really know what they're talking about. So yeah. It is refreshing to speak to people who are just honest about the fact that, hey, a lot of these are moving targets and you're still learning. I'm going to ask you about this issue that I think is so important to West Texas. I've asked all the candidates about it, and that is the issue of water. We here in the Panhandle, we live and die with water. Our economy does. And we have these heavy droughts all the time, and we're always facing the issues of shortage of water. And looking forward, our councils in the past have kind of implemented policies where they've asked people, conservation-wise, why don't you, water your grass on this day instead of this day, or, do this or that. If you're elected, how are you going to ensure that Amarillo has the water it needs to survive and prosper as the city continues to grow?
Wow, that is a great question.
Sure.
Man, I have to think on that one for a minute. Obviously we're gonna have to work with. That's a big infrastructure thing, and we're gonna have to work diligently as a team to find those avenues so that doesn't happen. My opinion. This is me speaking. I pay a water bill, and I don't feel that somebody has a right to tell me with whether I can water my grass or not. And so that's kind of that's a fine line with me. But as far as finding ways to prepare for that, that's something that we're going to have to look into, this next elected group to figure that out. So yeah, that's kind of where I stand on that without diving deep into trying to formulate some sort of plan right now. That's a good question.
Well, I will ask you this one final, or I guess I have two final questions for you before we get into the fun stuff. With our tax rate, Amarillo has a relatively, I guess, middle of the road tax rate, all things considered. But, the economy's bad right now. People are struggling. People are losing their jobs. I don't know if you've been watching the headlines, but there have been just tons of layoffs recently with big companies, including some here in the Panhandle. And we may be in a recession. I think we actually are, even though, Joe Biden won't say we are. But, the economy is rough right now. Taxes keep going up. The legislature says we're going to get some kind of property tax relief. We don't really know what that is, and we don't even know if that's actually going to come out. But all things considered, when we're talking about the needs of Amarillo and the issues that we have to face, are property tax increases something that are on the table for you in your first term in office?
No, not for me. No, not at all. I'm not going to say, at some point that property taxes may increase, but that's not even on my radar right now. The majority of our revenue comes from sales tax, and we have to keep inhibiting these people to come in and want to do business and keep business local. So that way, because I'm a property taxpayer as well, and I get just as mad as anybody else when I see that bill come in the mail. And I want to keep Amarillo as conservative as possible.
Well, I'll ask you this one final question before we get into the fun stuff. You are a first-time candidate. You're a younger guy. You're running for office,
Yep.
But you're making a pretty good showing so far. How are you directing your campaign as far as earning support and generating the votes? What are the top things you are doing to go get the votes right now? And who are the top backers of your campaign?
So right now, a lot of it was money out of my own pocket to get this thing kick-started. A lot of it is just traditional, campaigning, so going out talking to people, door knocking, just those traditional methods of that. And of course, I was endorsed by the local 542, so that was a big help, and they've done some in-kind donations for voter lists. So that's kind of the just normal people, reaching out and saying, hey, can you donate here, here, and here? And that's kind of the real rough part for me is, I've never been the type of person to ask for money. So it's been a big learning curve for me, because I would never want to do that, if that makes sense. But yeah, just traditional campaign methods for me. Door knocking, flyers, social media. That's a big thing right now, especially with the younger population, social media.
Well, I will ask you this. Like we've been talking about all night, pretty much every issue kind of comes back to this. You're a younger candidate. For people who are out there who are listening to this who are younger, and they think maybe I want to run for office someday or make a change in my community. From the experience you've gotten so far from running for city council, do you have any advice that you would give them about how to make a change in their community and get involved?
Well, I think one of the big things is just be yourself. People are going to like you one way or the other. They may not like you, they may like you, and just have that thick skin. And I would encourage anyone to run for office, because truly, if people can sit and complain on the sidelines, but if you really care and you want to try to make a difference, then no one's going to stop you from doing it. Everyone has their own values and opinions, and I have my own values and opinions. And I think if their mind and their heart are truly in the right place, then go for it. I encourage anyone to do it. I've learned a lot about myself and the person I am and the person I strive to be. And it's really been just a true humbling experience too.
You definitely learn a lot about yourself running for office, and you also, unfortunately, learn a lot about what people think about you.
Yeah, that's for sure.
Yeah. Sometimes you go, man, I didn't know I was that bad of a person until they told me.
Yeah. Sometimes you just have to take a hard look in the mirror and say, you know what, maybe it's all right.
Yeah, sure. I understand. Well, so with this year's candidate interviews, we've changed things up a little. We normally ask a lot of policy questions, and we've asked some tonight. I think you've done a great job answering them, and I think you have not avoided any question. You've answered everything straight on, and I really, really appreciate that, and I know the people who are listening to this do too, because electing somebody's hard, especially when it's a lot of people that we're not really familiar with. So being open, upfront, honest, and transparent with everybody about your feelings on the issues, that's so important. But aside from the policy questions, we're all neighbors, and win or lose, we're all going to have to continue to live in the same city together. And so this year we've come up with some questions where we hope that maybe it will give people a little better idea of who Josh Kraft actually is outside of being a candidate.
All right.
So if you're ready, we'll just jump right into these. And I have to warn you, these are some of the toughest questions you're going to get all election cycle. So are you ready?
Let's hear them.
Okay. First thing right off the bat, what is your favorite thing about Amarillo?
Man, honestly, my favorite thing about Amarillo has to be, it's just kind of a big, small city. In essence, you can go around anywhere and you're highly likely to run into somebody you know. I love that factor of Amarillo. And, one of the other things I love are the people. I love the people. It's kind of a little bit of we're still kind of Western around these parts, and I love how there's still that good sense of community. And that's one of the big things too that I want to try to help improve is community, and just everybody helping, neighbors helping neighbors, and just try to keep that family atmosphere, and we look across the nation right now and how divided it is. Those are some of the core things I love about the city of Amarillo.
Well, we don't ask everybody this question, but you're a younger guy like me, so I kind of assume you can answer this question. What is the last thing you binge watched?
The last thing I binge watched?
Yes.
Probably Mayor of Kingstown.
It was what?
Mayor of Kingstown.
Oh, yeah. That's a good one.
Yeah, that's a good one. In fact, me and my wife, we just finished watching that this week, so it's a pretty good show.
Oh, absolutely. I understand that. What is your favorite Oh, go ahead.
I said, what about you, man? What's the last show you binge watched?
Man, I don't know. My wife and I this past summer, we did Breaking Bad, and that's a good one. And I think we're about to do Sons of Anarchy, so good choices all the way around.
Yes, sir.
Well, another great question. Hopefully this will let people know a little more about you. What's your favorite restaurant in Amarillo, and what's your go-to order when you go there?
Man, so I know that people listening right now, they're already going to know what I'm going to say. It's going to be Scott's Oyster Bar, man. Scott's Oyster Bar. That is our go-to place. There's times where I was eating there 2 or 3 times a week. Gosh, I probably go to the doctor right now. They say I have high cholesterol, but yeah. So my go-to order there has got to be the dozen raw oysters and then fried catfish.
Sure. Did they pay you to make that plug for them, or just doing that for free?
No, it's free. It's funny. It's funny you say that, because every time it pops up like on those Facebook groups about restaurant reviews, they'll say, well, what's the best seafood in Amarillo? And without a shadow of a doubt, somebody will say, oh, Josh's going to say Scott's Oyster Bar, and I catch flack at it at work or from some of the sheriff's deputies, and it's pretty funny.
Here's another great one. Let me rephrase that. What was your first job?
My first job, I worked for, it's called Sound Systems Limited. They're a small business. They've been here, I think, over 40 years now. And I was a car electronics installer, so I would do remote starts, subwoofers, just anything, radios, custom fabricated stuff inside vehicles. And that was a real fun job. In fact, before I started there the week after I graduated high school, but during high school, I remember the times of some buddies would come over and and we would do that inside my mom's garage in the middle of winter, and it's pretty fun. I learned a lot. I learned a lot how to interact with people, and just it was a real great time to work for a small business as well.
Well, that usually would be the end of this, but I asked Don Tips on a previous episode to tell us an interesting fact about him. And the answer he gave was that he's not a Cowboys fan. And I know that's so controversial. It probably lost him a ton of votes. But I'm going to ask you the same question then. Not quite the same question, but, poking at the same thing. Are you a Cowboys fan? And if not, who's your team?
Oh, I've always been a Tom Brady guy, so Tampa Bay Bucks before he retired.
Well, who are you with now?
Back to the Cowboys.
You are a smart politician, absolutely.
That's ironic, man, because I'm not a politician. That's funny.
Sure. Well, for anyone listening to this, like we said, it's a huge field of candidates running for place one. And for anyone who's undecided, can you just take a minute, give us your elevator pitch, and tell us why you are the guy who needs to be elected to Amarillo City Council place one this year?
Yeah, so I'm a husband, I'm a father, I'm a lieutenant for Randall County, I'm an instructor, small business owner, and it's just been disheartening to watch division and disagreements between the people in our city. And we're actually on the same team because we all care what's best for Amarillo. And I want to be a new, fresh voice for the citizens and help shift that culture, bring people together. And I truly am willing to give everything to ensure the citizens have a voice, restore that trust in their elected leaders.
Absolutely. For anyone listening to this who wants to get a yard sign, they want to donate, they want to knock on doors, they just want to do something to get Josh Kraft elected to the city council, how can they go about doing that?
Yeah, so my website is joshisOneofUs.com. You can go on there, you can fill out the form to donate or get a yard sign or whatever you'd like to do. And then my Facebook page is facebook.com/Kraft with a C for Amarillo City Council. That's funny because some people are like, oh, you're Kraft, like Kraft mac and cheese with a K, and that's kind of how to remember it with a C.
Just to be totally clear for anyone listening to this who hasn't seen the website yet, joshisoneofus.com, that is one spelled out, correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Just wanted to make sure, so we were sending people to the right place.
That's it.
But, Josh, we really appreciate you being with us. And for anyone listening to this who's, undecided, May 6th, it's just around the corner. You still have a little bit of time, but, at this point, you need to be making some decisions. And we hope that you got the chance to know Josh a little better tonight to find out if he's the guy you want to send to the city council. But either way, like I said, Josh, we really appreciate you being with us tonight. We wish you all the best on this campaign trail, sir.
Man, thank you guys. And Thomas, I really appreciate you giving this opportunity for me to come on tonight. And, let's get going and make things happen with Amarillo.